Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Neil Smith, joined by my co-host, Aaron Magnuson. And today we are talking about, we're talking about Kenny Jahng, to be honest. Kenny is a longtime listener, longtime friend. He was actually the first episode ever of this podcast was with Kenny Jahng probably 10 years ago now, or close to 10 years ago. And he recently did a podcast on his podcast, Church Communications, with our mutual friend, Seth Muse, who has also been on this podcast, about the top 10 unwritten rules for church social media. Now, the reality is Kenny by himself without Katie,
risky.
Katie Allred who is the secret sauce of church communications is risky. Yes, Aaron.
Very risky. I don't know how he got a hold of the mic without Katie knowing, without Katie being there to guide him.
Katie, don't let it happen again. But let's talk about the top 10 things they discuss and if we agree or disagree, because I think this is a great list and a good conversation to get off of. And I will say, if you're not already subscribed to Church Communications Podcast, you need to go do that. It's a great podcast. If you're not in the Facebook group, Church Communications Facebook group, that is the best Facebook group on the internet.
Totally. What are they up? Like 12,000? We're talking about a 5-figure.
I think it's like 20,000. It's
20,000.
Yeah, it's massive. They're like, it's a community.
Yes.
And so I learned so much in that group. And if I have a question, I go straight to that group and ask it, and I get a dozen responses immediately.
Yes.
Or I just go to the library and search for old conversations. So there's just so much gold there. Great community there. So let's talk about it. The first point in their list is don't like your own post on social media. Aaron, what do you think?
Well, this one makes me laugh. I wish I could argue with it. More of what I'm amazed by is that this still has to be said. You just don't do that. And if you've been doing that, like, social media has existed for way long enough where everybody should know this. You just don't do that. I guess I still do see it. Now, I'll tell you what bothers me, and I don't know how to fix this. I just need to go in there and do it. When you have a ton of managers of your Facebook page, I'll tell you, it's a coin flip for me when I go in trying to interact on my personal page, and this happens a lot more on mobile than on desktop, where I will accidentally like it, thinking it's me, Aaron, but it's actually as my page. And that's really frustrating. And it's even more frustrating when I can't tell. So I will say there are times where I have done this, but I have certainly never done this intentionally thinking that it's good. Yes.
I'll admit it, Aaron. I do it. I don't do it everywhere all the time, but the platform that I do it on is YouTube, because people can't tell who liked your post, and I want to get as many thumbs up as I can on each video.
So interesting.
I do it on every single YouTube video that I post, and so I'm coming out and openly admitting that. I don't do it on on Twitter or Facebook where people can see that you liked your own post, but I do it on YouTube, and I would do it on those platforms if people didn't see it, just to help engagement, because that helps the algorithm ranking and the perceived value of the post.
Nils.
So I think it's a good strategy if people can't tell. So I think you should.
Facebook is pretty open about showing, like Facebook might as well announce it from the rooftop. They show you really quick. But that's well, let me ask this, not to spend too much time on liking your own post. Has it ever been effective? Was there a point in time where you actually saw and I'm talking about on Facebook?
No. I mean, I generally agree with the point here. But I want to admit, I just want to be open that, and I think there's a little bit of variance there. I'm a gray guy. And so I think to say this is a black and white issue, I think it's maybe a gray. So I would say most of the time, don't like your own post, but sometimes maybe it's not a bad idea. It didn't hurt. On YouTube.
Your name is Nils Smith on you. Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Go over to Nils' page and give him a like.
Go like some of my YouTube videos so I don't have to do this.
The real issue is that.
More thumbs up on my YouTube.
All right, let's get into number two. Number two. Don't get political. Nils, you got commentary around this?
You know, I agree, but I also think there's some gray here. I think social media is a great place for conversation. I think this is your platform to talk about the things that you're passionate about. people are passionate about politics. I think where people get um, upset about this is when people state opinions as if they're factual on politics, and
Yes.
when people all only talk about politics. But the reality is, this is a place to share life and community, and part of life is politics wherever you live. And to be able to share your opinions and passion about that, I don't think is a terrible thing. But I think to do it just for the sake of, I think the tone in which it's done is what really stirs people up. Um, and I would say this is a good general best practice to generally stay away from, especially for ministry leaders. So I think it's a gray area, but I don't think it's 100% black and white.
Yeah, I was
So
going to
I would
say
avoid politics.
both tone and frequency matter.
Yes.
Yeah, you certainly want to have the right tone when you do it, but let's make it few and far between if you are going to do it. Now, I think there's some things where I would strongly disagree with this one, particularly where you live. I mean, I can't think of a more political pastor
Yeah.
than yours,
Yes.
Carl Lentz at
Yes.
Hillsong, New York City. But it's always tasteful, and predominantly, to be fair, it is on his personal page. I can't speak for Hillsong New York City,
Yeah.
their organization's page, but he's the ambassador for that whole organization. And so
Yeah.
there are things where silence is probably more problematic than coming out and saying something. And again, there's ways to do it, and probably best done, as I'm thinking about it, if you are going to get political, let's do it on video. Like let's not let a text-based or an image-based thing exclusively write our narrative, but let's show that we want to dialogue about it by doing it on video. And so I do think you shouldn't outright just not talk about it, because there's
Yes.
some instances where, yeah, your silence would be worse. But let's be intentional,
Yes.
strategical, good tone, and frequency. Very important. Very
Yes.
important.
Well, and I appreciate bringing up Carl, in that his the way he is engaged with politics on social media has been meaningful to me. And as him being my pastor, and the things he's spoken out for and against, I've valued that he used his platform in that way. And so I think that's one of the situations. And many people would advise him not to do that. I'm proud of him for doing that. So yeah, I think yeah. I want to be argumentative here too, for the sake of this list, because I do want to say, Seth and Kenny, this is a great list.
Yes, it is.
But I think, and this is giving us good talking points. The third one here is stay positive. This is one that I agree with 99% of the time. So I'm going to really lean into, yes, I agree with that. I think we also need to be real and authentic and not fake positive. But look, people
Yes.
don't want to hear your constant negativity. They don't want to hear all about all your sicknesses and illnesses and gripes and how tired you are. People like to smile. People like to laugh. People in social media needs to be a positive part of our lives. And so sharing the positive aspects of life in your church and ministry is really the best thing to do. I would say I pretty much 100% agree with this. Maybe 99%. Aaron, thoughts?
Yeah, 99.9 for me. That's my mantra. I will say the difficulty in this, I think there's more creativity in positivity,
Yes.
because the negative stuff is easier to engage with, and you're going to get faster engagement if you post something with a negative bent. What do you hate? What's your pet peeve? There's a great, I'm a Denver Broncos fan, and so I'm in a couple Facebook groups, and so there's one post that I've posted in there, and it got a ton of engagement. But it was, which player are you really glad is no longer a Denver Bronco? And there's some lightheartedness to that, but you're going to think of something that you hate way faster than something that you love. But there's a way to create a lot of engagement through positivity, and I do think, without a doubt, that is a much better place to take your page to. Just realize it takes a little bit more effort and creativity. And if you are only thinking of real negative things, I think that's the easy way out on social media. So
Yeah.
step your game up and figure out a way to be positive and create that engagement.
Love it. Love it. Number 4, also one that I agree with here, share your people's content.
Yes.
Now the guy that I see doing this better than anyone, if you're not yet following Mike Todd, on Instagram.
Ooh, yes.
He is crushing Instagram as a pastor, and he does a great job of sharing his people's content and the things that they're posting and engaging in that way. And so
At
share.
I am Mike Todd. I
Yes.
am Mike Todd. Two
Yes.
D's on the Todd.
There you
I
go.
agree. And I'm thankful for Instagram, Nils, because Facebook, this is a little bit more difficult to execute on Facebook. Both commenting and sharing. Twitter and Instagram both seem like more natural avenues to do this. And so I'm thankful that there are things like Twitter and Instagram, particularly Instagram, which seems to just be our platform of 2020, at least here at the start. But yeah, be particularly in stories. If someone is tagging you, it is fantastic. And actually, your wife on Instagram, coming to New York City, that's a plug. Nils won't plug it. I'll plug it. Catch up on their podcast as well. But Katie posted on the Coming to New York City Instagram page that she was, I think your kids were playing with their cousins via Portal, and Facebook Portal's Instagram thing redid her story, reshared
I
it.
didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Go, you need to start. See, that was more for
follow
Nils.
my
I was talking to Nils right now, is what the deal was, not to you guys. But you also should join him in checking out Katie's stuff. But yeah, they redid that, and so not only is it free content, it's also a chance for you to create conversation, engagement, and again, it shows that you and your organization are not tone deaf. You're actually listening. You're actually engaged. You're actually there, and it's more meaningful than responding to somebody in the comment section. You should be doing that as well. But when you have advocates, brand ambassadors, celebrate them and share their stuff, and get in that comment section. And I think the hesitation, because I also want to say I did listen to this podcast. Nils has not yet listened to this podcast, but they said just be cognizant and be careful of how you're sharing and how you're commenting, particularly when your organization is interacting with a personal page. And I agree with that 100%. I think that is more of a caution for Facebook because of people's privacy, those sorts of things. But I think that what I appreciate, there's less of a bar and less of hesitation doing that on something like Twitter, on something like Instagram, particularly Instagram stories. But do that. Get in there. Do that.
I cannot believe Facebook shared my wife's post, and I had no idea. Yeah, thanks for paying more attention to my wife's Instagram than I am, Aaron. And calling me out for not listening to this podcast with Kenny and Seth. I was gonna.
Yeah, I got to do this. And so, since you've introduced me as a co-host, there's a certain level that this co-host needs to live up to, and I think Jay Cranda has done it very well.
Yes.
And I need to not be so frenzy with Nils Smith.
Nick and I were too buddy.
It's a dangerous thing. We can't have people thinking that we're too buddy.
Yes.
And there just needs. I feel like Jay listens to this. We're getting sidetracked here. This is Jay listens to this, and he's disappointed that people are so friends with Nils.
Yes.
And so Jay, this is for you, buddy. I'm trying to get a little more Jay Cranda flair.
And Aaron, this is what you're going to find is I feel like this podcast has actually led to my best friend. DJ Trong is one of my best friends in this world. He was in New York, came to church with us a couple of weeks ago. Jay and I have shared so much of life together. And it started before the podcast, and it has continued well after the podcast. Jay is genuinely one of my best friends. Kenny, he's not a co-host, but he's essentially a part of this podcast. One of my best friends. Nick has become, over the last couple of years, one of my best. I'm so grateful for the relationships. You and I just had some time by the fire in Phoenix together recently at the Dunham Company Summit. The friendship that is developing here.
Yeah, not best friends. Don't let our listeners get it. Don't let it get it confused. I'm not there yet. This is actually Nils's trial run to see if you make it into being his best friend. This is the seat you sit in. This is actually just an ongoing interview to see if I am worthy of being a best friend of Nils Smith. Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see. Too many differences at this point.
I wish you luck. And the key will be abandoning the Broncos and joining.
Well, we're sitting in similar seats as both of our NBA teams, the Trailblazers and the Spurs, are watching courtside as the rest of the NBA plays basketball. We're still trying to figure out how that goes. Anyways, we should get back to this list because our ultimate enemy is Kenny Jahng.
Yes, Kenny.
Kenny.
What's the deal? This is yeah. Let's talk about his podcast again.
Yeah.
Number 5. Don't spam your wall. What does that mean, Aaron? Don't spam.
Yeah, there's probably lots of different interpretations on this. I feel like spamming the wall is just bulletin board is how it's been talked about before. So if you think about your church's building and you think about a bulletin board, probably you don't have that anymore. Maybe think about your info desk and all of the pamphlets and things that exist there. Don't make your social media wall that. Particularly what I think about spam too is like even in the context of like memes and just low production quality things. And so not only visually low production, but also content low production. Like it's just not engaging. And I would agree with this. I don't think I could even argue the other side of, you should do some spammy things. Outside. Well, the only argument to this would be maybe do something. I don't even know. Is something better than nothing if it's spam? Nils, take it.
Well, and I remember I had a guy call me out early on, and it was very convicting to me, is when I started onlinechurch.com, 90% of my posts were, hey, join me at onlinechurch.com, join me at onlinechurch.com, join me at onlinechurch.com. And he's like, dude, I don't know you, but I'm unfollowing you because I'm tired of hearing you telling me to join you at onlinechurch.com instead of talking about anything else, life, and like, it's not. Yeah. So that was spammy of me. And that was convicting. And I have thought about it ever since. And so, I say that to say, I fully agree with this. And that's, I've done it. And I've made just about every mistake. Most of my social media coaching comes from mistakes that I've made by looking for shortcuts or just being lazy or whatever it might be. So don't spam your wall. Agree with that. Number 6, abide by the 80-20 rule. What's the 80-20 rule, Aaron?
Yeah, this is probably from our good friend Gary Vaynerchuk as well. But I would say my definition of the 80-20 rule would be 80% giving, no asks, no right hooks, and then 20% make the ask, because the ask is still important. If your audience doesn't know you're looking for something, or and they're so bought into what you're doing, that if you never make the ask, you're never giving them an opportunity to exercise what they would very quickly and willingly exercise. And so and Nils, you could probably speak into this more practically, what the 80-20 would look like, some practical examples of that. But I would sign off on this. I mean, I might even err, particularly when it's a church, or the context that we're in might even be more like 90-10. Not so much 80-20, but certainly heavily erring on the side of, I'm going to give content. And this would be the critique that you just talked about in number 5 about spamming, the critique that you got, ask with no give. And so always be thinking about how you can add value, add to the conversation, not what can you get from people, like please comment, please share, please go to nilsmith.com, those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's good. That's I fully agree. I think and where I think the way I would communicate this is information and inspiration is you should have, and I always say no less than 50% inspirational content. Now there's other pieces that are inspirational that are not informational, but you should have no more. And I've always said 25% informational, 20% is an even better number here. And so where I see churches making mistakes is they use social media as an announcement board. Well, that's not engaging. That's not really interesting. That's only helping the 5 people that really do want to just get announcements there. But there's probably 5,000 other people that you want to engage in a more meaningful way and following that 80-20 rule. So, man, we're on a streak of agreeing with them. Aaron, it's time to disagree a little bit.
Yeah, and we are going to disagree hardcore on this one.
Go ahead with number 7.
Number 7, and I'm going to kick this to you, Nils, because this is your, if you listen to what Nils is focused on here in 2020, it is in direct rebuttal to number 7. Number 7, Nils, Kenny and Seth both think that you should have no automated responses on your pages. Nils, what say you?
Well, my focus, if you've listened to previous podcasts, as we're going into 2020, my focus this year is bots. messenger bots in particular. And I think bots are going to integrate across social media in general. I think automated communication is a big part of our future, especially as artificial intelligence becomes more significant. And I think it's going to be a part of social media. And I think automation can integrate with automation personal engagement in real time in ways as we're wise about it. Now, I have used automation in a negative way that I think they're probably more speaking to of. I auto-hearted every tweet that somebody would
Yes.
mention me. I used to auto-retweet some tweets. I used to auto-DM people on Instagram every time they followed me.
Did you really?
I set up systems. I was always testing different things of I wanted to have a welcome message. Well, I kind of learned over time I thought it was a nice thing to do. I learned over time it really just felt automated and impersonal. If I really needed to do it, I should probably take the time on that platform in particular. And so I think automation has generally been misused in social media, and probably even with bots has already been misused to a point. But I think automation, and we see this with email now, if you're not using automation in your email, you're not using it. Imagine if you just use one-to-one emails for every single emails that you sent. If I'm only going to use Outlook or Gmail, I'm not going to use MailChimp or any of these other platforms. That's incredibly inefficient. So I think automation is and will continue to grow to be a more significant part of social media. So I think we should actually be leaning into automation, not moving away from automation.
Yes.
That's my
I would agree. I think in my very limited but kind of in-depth experience making a bot, using a bot, managing a bot, I think it's just important. I do think that this is coming, so don't sleep on it. And I think that there's ways to use it that are very practical. And I think the technology is only going to get smarter where it's going to sound like you. And like Nils is talking about, more specifically within my Gmail, they have auto-crafted responses based on how I usually start that first sentence of my email responses. Like it sounds like me. It's automated, but it sounds like me. And so I think it's important to not dismiss automation because it's impersonal. Understand that it's only going to be getting more personal, but also be okay and be clear that it's a bot. I feel like that's good. When people understand what it is and what it is they're interacting with, they're more apt to not be. I think the offense happens, not that they're interacting with a bot, but they maybe initially thought they were interacting with you. And then they realize they weren't, and that's frustrating. And so as long as you're clear up front, totally invest in and make this something that's helpful for you. I know, Nils, you advocate for Chat Fuel, particularly for your Facebook Messenger, and I think that's a great place to start. I think if you have the capacity at all to engage in this and kind of do a deep dive into what a bot could look like, they're actually not that difficult, particularly if you're going through Chat Fuel, to set up and experiment with. You can go over to the Social Media Church Facebook page and start practicing with it a little bit. We have one on there, but just keep experimenting with it, keep working with it, because you can make it sound like you can be upfront about what it is, and it can enhance the experience that somebody has with your organization, particularly because of the speed of response. And when it's done well, everybody loves that.
Yes, 100%. Next point is number 8, permission to post pictures of minors. You can't argue with this. I mean, I think
not at all.
To just post pictures of minors without permission is honestly illegal.
Yes.
And so if you're going to argue with this, now I will say
this might not be an unwritten rule. That's where I would argue. This is not an unwritten rule. There's probably plenty of places where this one is written. Don't be dumb.
But pictures with kids outperform anything else on social media. I think people want to see that you have kids in your church.
Totally.
But get permission. Use staff kids. But be very careful in this area. So, but don't post pictures of don't post. Yeah,
that's probably important. What you just said. Number 8 is not don't do it. It's figure out a way to do it legally. Because one of the coolest things that our kids' Instagram does, and I know that at Hillsong, you and Katie heavily rely on, the Hillsong New York's Instagram for the kids. But one of the cool things is we get to see our daughter frequently worshiping and dancing, not only because she's worth filming on Instagram, but also probably because there's some comfortability because we know the teachers to do our kids. But there's something really cool about seeing that and seeing kids experiencing church through their eyes. And so, figure out a way for your church to be able to do that well, because it adds value to the parents. It creates more buy-in and it's shareable.
Yes. And at Community Bible Church and at Hillsong, they do it as a part of the kids check-in process. And so when you're a first-time person, it's a part of that process where you're getting media permission as well as kind of liability permission. And so include that in those permissions. And sometimes there is specific reasons why parents don't want you to do that. And then you kind of flag a kid of like, okay, let's make sure we're not getting this kid in any pictures. So you can be more aware.
And most places have printed name tags and stuff. And I just want to be clear about this. Our church in Oregon, a church of 300, we met in a middle school. We had printed name tags, all of that stuff. We had a computer check-in system. So a small church and a big church, this is valuable. And we did the same thing at my church in Oregon that we do here, where you, particularly for the new guests, you have them sign off on it right there. You can cover it. You can flag their name tag if there's somebody who can't be photographed. But that content is really, really valuable for creating buy-in and engagement and all of those things. So venture down that path.
Absolutely. Number 9, silence is loud. Explain this to me, Aaron.
So I think how Seth and Kenny talked about it, not engaging. I think this would probably pertain to maybe some of the political stuff that we were talking earlier on. But I think they were even talking about it super practically of when you're not responding, when you're not engaging in the comment section or on social at all, if you're not posting to your page, you're not just not there. That's loud, particularly when somebody is checking you out, looking to see what you're all about. If you're not engaged on social media, if they can't find you at all, that speaks louder than spammy posts, than non-engaged posts. Silence is very loud on social media, and I think that I would totally agree with it.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I would say, and this goes for like, look, if there's a shooting somewhere and you're just posting about other things because you had it scheduled out, I think you got to pause some of that and talk about that issue that's happening. Or if there's an issue in your community, you've got to be actively engaging on those topics. People are looking to hear from their church. They're looking to hear from their pastor in times of crisis, or if there's a news related issue that's come out, like be proactive. That's a good word. Good job, Seth and Kenny, on this one. I'm going to give Seth the credit though.
Yes. For the record, this was Seth's list that Kenny was speaking into, but Kenny, guilty by association. So there's nowhere to hide.
Number 10 and the final one here, spelling and grammar are super important. I would disagree with this. I think spelling and grammar are important. I don't know that I would call them super important. And I'll tell you why. I think it's important to be professional. I think a grammatical mistake here and there, and I've actually heard people say that they do it intentionally in emails so it feels more authentic and real. And so I think there's the occasional misspelling that actually feels more personal and real than getting it all right. And it can even be misspelled in a way that doesn't sound like you don't know how to spell, but like you just clicked the wrong key. So it's like a B thrown into something, that's really a C. But because the keys are close to each other, you click that one. So I would disagree with that. Now I would say that, I'd value it. I wouldn't put it in top 10, and I wouldn't make this something that I would get wound up about. Now, if you're consistently making spelling errors, I think you've got an issue. But that's my 2 cents. Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what you said is good. And I think the essence of what you said is less about spelling and more about how you sound. If you sound too corporate, if you sound too professional, if you sound polished and unapproachable, people aren't going to engage with you. And so spelling is a way to, maybe not intentional, but you should be thinking like, am I typing this with my thumbs or am I typing this on my, Mac keyboard? And depending on, what social platform you're on, you're thinking about those in different ways. But if you're on Instagram, I mean, it's thumbs all the way. And if you're on Twitter, it's thumbs all the way. And so you need to be talking on there like you're talking from your thumbs, not talking from all 10 of your fingers, working on a keyboard, if that metaphor makes sense.
Yeah.
But now I will say that you're right. Kenny, in the podcast, Kenny talks about how he intentionally on a graphic versus the text in a post might be change this conversation slightly. I'd be curious, Nils, to hear your take on that. But he said that in his graphic, he intentionally had the wrong spelling because he knew it would create engagement. Seth actually called him on it. They're both talking about this together. They reminisced on this and sent Kenny a DM because he said he's above shaming Kenny in the comment section. But Kenny responded and he's like, well, yeah, but watch and see what happens on the engagement as everybody corrects me. And even after they've seen 10 people correct, they still feel like, oh, one more won't hurt. And they'll go on there and they'll comment. And so Kenny was talking about just the way of engagement. So he would agree with you on that, Nils. I don't know that it's in a top 10 list. And I don't know that, again, it's going to make or break you if you have a spelling error. Like, you shouldn't take down the post. Maybe you should. It depends on what it is. But I would say it's not not in a top 10 list.
Kenny, you're a smart guy. Seth, you're an even smarter guy.
Very nice.
Guys, this was a great list. We appreciate, I hope you feel the love that we took the time to go through your list. I hope we didn't over-critique it. This is a great list. And I hope if you're a church leader, you go listen to their podcast to hear the original list. But we appreciate you listening to this conversation. We appreciate all the people that are helping churches maximize social media. We appreciate that church and Sunday U and all the folks in the church communications world that are doing such great things to serve the church, to help churches maximize social media. And church communications is the best out there.
That's
so
right.
Make sure you're part
and
of
if there's anything not on that list, we want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
Hashtag
absolutely.
SMC podcast. If there's something that it's glaringly not on that list, or you just adamantly disagree with what we said, if you feel about us how we feel about Kenny, we need you to get on social media and get in that comment section and let us know.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Go to our website, socialmedia.church, for the show notes and everything about Social Media Church and what we're doing to help churches maximize social media. Thanks so much for listening.